are ready to get started today. Welcome everyone to today's Faculty Academic Staff Forum at UW-Eau Claire. Happy to see so many people in the audience today. This is one of those wonderful days when the Office of Research and Sponsored Programs collaborates with the College of Business, and we bring you not one, but two talks today in our 40-minute period. We have some folks joining us on Zoom, and so I want to invite them to also contribute to the discussion and Q&A when the time comes by using the Q&A function at the bottom of your screen. And for those of you in the audience, you are, of course, also encouraged to contribute and ask questions. I'm going to introduce our first speaker. Dr. Cole Crider is an assistant professor in the Department of Management and Leadership Programs in the College of Business. His talk is entitled When Signals Substitute, Budget Disclosure, Platform Endorsements, and Crowdfunding Success. So please join me in giving a warm welcome to Dr. Crider.
Thank you very much, and thank you all for being here and joining on Zoom. So a big issue for entrepreneurs is funding. And about 16, 17 years ago, how entrepreneurs can get funded dramatically changed with the introduction of some large crowdfunding platforms, namely Kickstarter and Indiegogo being two of those. This particular study looks at Kickstarter. With all of the different kinds of companies that are on these platforms, a big issue is trying to separate yourself from other companies. So we end up with something like a products graveyard. We've got a lot of projects that never go funded. 40% seems like a really high number, but keep in mind, it's not just startups, there's also corporations that are testing out new products as well. So 40%, is it good, is it bad? Well, it's at least a viable option, including for students, which makes it a lot of fun to bring into the classroom. Quality varies across all of these different kinds of projects. So what entrepreneurs try to do is signal to their potential backers, hey, I'm going to be legitimate, I'm actually going to fulfill the product, I'm worth trusting. And there's been a bit of research on how do you get your backers to trust you versus somebody else? What kinds of signals can we give to have that trust be there? There are some different things that the literature has looked at. One is internal signals, me as the company, what can I do? Things like product demonstrations. Do I have a viable prototype? Do I do project updates? That's a big one. But then there's also external signals, things like customer reviews, endorsements, etc. The main effects have been studied for a while now. So going back about 10 years, the research has been looking at a lot of the direct effects from the signals on things like crowdfunding performance. What's become more interesting, though, is the interaction effects between external and internal signals, and do they complement each other? Is there something added by adding more signals, or is there more overlap or substitution that's occurring when the additional signal doesn't really help the backer make the decision to back the company or not? All right, so what we do is essentially look at complementary or substitutionary. We look at two specific signals. This is the Project We Love endorsement badge by Kickstarter. So back a couple of years ago, they started internally picking projects that they as a company liked and just wanted to put their stamp of approval on. That's the external endorsement signal that we look at. And then on the right-hand side over here is the budget disclosure. And this isn't available to all Kickstarter campaign types, just for some, but it gives the opportunity for the entrepreneur to say, hey, I have some level of financial skills or competencies in order to generate some of that trust. So what we wanted to look at is, number one, does this Projects We Love badge actually lead to increased funding performance? It's been used in prior papers, but only as a control, not as a direct effect. And then number two, when we look at these together, do they complement each other, or do they have that substitutionary effect where the additional signal doesn't necessarily help the entrepreneur? Maybe it doesn't hurt him or her, but it doesn't necessarily help. The third hypothesis looks at campaign complexity and budget complexity. So a big issue here is as the information increases, either by the campaign or by the level of complexity in the budget, do we see more substitutionary effect or not? So those are the three main hypotheses driving the paper. We looked at campaign performance, and this is pretty consistent in the literature: total pledge amount, number of backers, and average dollar amount per backer. What we found is across the campaigns we looked at, over 10,000, There was about $35,000 that firms raised across 240-ish backers per campaign and around $115 per backer. So not a ton of money. This is not like VC angel kind of money, but these aren't necessarily the kinds of firms going at those types of funding sources at this point in time. They're trying to go for smaller monies, get the ball rolling, go for bigger money later on. So H1, again, looking at the project we love has a direct effect on firm performance, and it matters a lot. So we see significant, substantial, obviously the model was significant, but substantial increases in funding performance when they've gotten the third-party external endorsement. So the external endorsement makes a big difference for these campaigns. We did a second stage instrumental variable, and what we used for the instrumental variable, which is consistent with prior literature by Fu and other colleagues, is looking at the percent of campaigns who were also funded and had that Project We Love badge, but now we're not part of the focal group. So that's been a consistent variable in the literature, and we just utilized that. But you can see the model is significant here, and also when we throw in the instrumental variable. All right. The second one then is looking at that substitutionary effect, though. So when you have the external endorsement and the internal budget disclosure, do we see them as complementary? They're adding information to the funder, or they really aren't. We're basically just getting the same signal again, the same level of information. There's no additional value that's really being provided. And what we see is the Projects We Love effect weaker when the budget disclosure is there. So an easier way to look at this, and there's the model, is looking at this particular table. So what you'll notice is when they have the budget disclosure, it's actually lower across all of our different funding metrics than when they don't. It's not bad. It just doesn't help, essentially. The third hypothesis goes back to campaign complexity and budget complexity. So what we found is that the substitutionary effect, again, between the two signals, grows stronger as the level of complexity increases. So whether it's budget, there's just more information in the budget, or there's more information in the campaign, as that increases, the substitutionary effect also increases. The overlap increases. There was our budget complexity model, and then we have our campaign complexity model, and both are equally consistent. So what does this mean for entrepreneurs in the classroom, out in the community? What can we actually tell them? If your financial skills are not good, definitely get the Project We Love endorsement, because it matters and it's important and it's going to be tremendously helpful to you. If your financial skills are really solid, though, that's going to be even more valuable than the Project We Love endorsement. Whether or not you have both may not make a huge difference. One thing that we're looking at next is to go even more into the financial skill sets. How do we see if the investors, whether they be on crowdfunding sites or whatever, are accurately engaging the level of financial competency that these investors, these entrepreneurs have? So a couple of years ago, we did a paper on looked at perceived passion, and investors were not good at evaluating the passion of the entrepreneurs, even though they thought they were. Do we see a similar thing with financial competency? Do they think they're evaluating the financial skills of the entrepreneur when really they're not? So this can be kind of a way to go into that next project. So again, we looked at two signals, the external Project We Love signal, and then the internal budget disclosure signal. They are substitutionary rather than complementary. Both matter, both are important, and we think both can be really helpful to entrepreneurs. Any questions? Yeah.
Cool. I think it's a really interesting paper. Just a quick question about this internal external signal, because the budgeting is internal, right? You mentioned that if you have financial abilities, right, creating the budgets, is this driven by the quality of insiders, or is there any other reasons why you don't want to share your budgeting information, disclosing that? Because these are the you don't want to disclose that much information, right, at the beginning of the project.
Right.
So I know externals are more interested in this kind of insider information. Is this the ability driven or is this just we are not interested in sharing this information first?
Yeah, great question. So there's a few different things there. One is there's some more recent literature looking at, does disclosing actually help?
Right.
So not only is it financial competence, but does it help you at all if you show sort of how stuff is made and your margins especially? So a recent paper in crowdfunding looked at like operating margins versus gross profit margins. Did that drive any kind of funding maybe? And they showed mainly it did help because it drove up the level of transparency or perceived transparency and trust by the backer to the company. So that was a good thing. I don't know that I'm necessarily answering your question, but there's that particular component there.
Okay. But probably we cannot identify from the data that why they are disclosing or not disclosing this. Is the ability or just.
I got you. Yeah. So we didn't look at that specifically. The budget disclosure is only available to certain types or to certain kinds of companies within Kickstarter. So
we know what types of.
arts, design, technology are the big three. When you do this, you have the option to show it or not if you're within those particular categories. It's not open to all types. They don't allow the budget disclosure for all types. Yeah. Yeah, thanks for the question.
Very interesting, Sottile. When they give out this project we love, any specific criteria they use, or there's no specific criteria, we just love this project. So what's the whole process of that?
So Kickstarter has this whole long list of guidelines on their website of companies should do all these things,
Okay.
should not do all these things. So
Okay,
they don't state, if you do all the stuff that we tell you to do, you get the badge. There's nothing like that.
oh,
We're assuming the more that you do all the things, the more likely you are to get the badge, but that's not explicitly
Okay.
stated anywhere. They just have the long list of broader guidelines.
okay, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's not saying we have this many checkbox, you do all those, you're going to get.
There's no automatic, yeah,
Okay, or the company size, project size, those are now, okay.
right. And the interesting thing about the Projects We Love badge is it's internally crowdsourced across employees within Kickstarter. So it's not just upper management that's getting those designations. It's within the whole company,
Okay,
which is interesting.
yeah,
And a cool way to make this more
yeah,
equitable somewhat.
thank you.
Do you know how many people get the badge or how many companies get the badge?
I should know the answer to that. I don't remember. Yeah.
No, I think like if a lot of companies get the badge, then it makes it more diffuse and it's not as helpful, but
Right.
if like a ton of, or if it's select
Right.
few, then that's like, well.
Yeah.
Really drive the.
Which is one reason I think the instrumental variable has been used in the past. It makes it especially strong is because it's the percent of the company that got the badge who were funded in a relatively same category within the same time period. So it's that regional control, category control, badge control, all of that to be clear.
I just have a question about the data collection process. How often, how many times is it possible to collect longitudinal data on performance now? I'm thinking about adding another layer of story. Just that adding a label here is one time thing, and disclosing in the budget is one time thing.
Right.
But when that signal was sent out, maybe there's trajectory of performance changing over days or months.
Right.
Depending on when we collect the data, maybe we can draw something up, like increase first and then decrease later. Something like that would be.
Yeah. A lot of these campaigns are relatively short, 15 to 30 days. So the launch, it may be either a different product with the same company's launching. One project I'm working on right now is looking at what happens after funding success. So a lot of times we just look at what are the determinants to get there. We don't look at what happens to them after they've successfully funded the project. So it kind of gets at that. I don't remember if the data went, if it was after the campaign was over, because it was between 2022 and 2025 was the data collection timeline. But I can go back and look at it. Kristen Drawins from FGCU did all the data collection. Really grateful for her.
Other questions? No, let's thank Dr.
Out of this.
Sure, I would use it.
Get a little extra time.
I think that I need to actually hear.
All right, so our second speaker today is Dr. Pedro Sottile. He is a professor in the Accounting and Finance Department here at UW Clare, and his talk today is From Classroom to Market, Learning with Bloomberg. So please join me in welcoming Dr. Sottile.
Thank you very much, and thank you very much for being here, and online. What I will be presenting is a different version of what I presented last week at the conference. That presentation was more about the example that I have from one of my courses. Like, given the time that I have, I don't know if I will be able to really get to it, but I will give it a shot. The interesting part about the audience there, I was not expecting to have so many people as we have for that session, was that one group was amazed about having Bloomberg and the way that we have it. I will show that to you in a moment. And the second one, that was the more interesting one, was people looking for examples how to use Bloomberg. And that's the reason why they came, because I was presenting an example. So the motivation for this presentation is to, in a way, show to you what we are doing, how lucky, if you want to say, we are to have the Bloomberg terminals. And this means that we are going from teaching abstract textbook, based, to use real industry-based technology to teach. So I'm not sure how many of you, hopefully this is going to work, how many of you know there you go. This is not supposed to be here, but well.
And prices for our customers. University of Phoenix is built for real life. At some schools, to save money, you have to move fast and load up on courses. We keep it simple.
Never happened, okay? Every time that I click it, it was actually having the video.
Phoenix.edu.
I want you to look at all the monitors, okay? Here. Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Give me one sec. There you go.
Airtel.
Look at all the monitors, okay?
Excuse me?
Airtel.
No.
Sorry?
No, no.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
He's my boss. Stone hall.
Thanks.
That's the moment that Eric Dale is actually walked. All this. And this is the sad part of the movie, so I will skip it. But every single screen that you see here, Bloomberg terminals, every single one of them, okay? And this is about the financial crisis of 2008, so I'm not going to refer to that part. Yeah, it's not good publicity for finance, but yeah, the point here is that Bloomberg terminal is a game changer in terms of instruction. Yeah, you have students that have access to real-time financial data, professional analytics, and here our question when we have is how to connect those tools to the conceptual learning. And the challenge is how we integrate Bloomberg in the classroom. Yeah, and that's part of my job and what my colleagues are doing. Yeah, we are doing it together. Yeah, so this is well understood that students learn finance more effectively when they actively work, and Bloomberg is special and the best in that sense. You improve retention, interpretation skills go up, engagement goes to the roof, really, yeah, and we connect theory with professional practice. There is some literature, of course, Dewey is the kind of like the classical in terms of experiential learning, but there is some literature about relating Bloomberg finance and how students actually learn. And the Bloomberg as an instructional platform is basically used for security analysis, portfolio management, the introductory course in finance or introductory finance, corporate, in economics, extensively used, and many times is kind of like a curriculum that goes through different courses. Here, what we have, yeah, is something that is based a little bit in terms of what we have from the literature, how to integrate the Bloomberg professional system in our courses. However, you can tell I'm citing 6 papers here. That is about the literature that you have on how to use Bloomberg in the classroom. Maybe here and there, a few other papers, but it's really thin. So clearly, yeah, you have in these courses, our goal is to have Bloomberg integrated in about 7 to 10 courses. Right now, we are at the stage that we are about 5 already using Bloomberg. By the time that we open the lab in the fall, we are going to have 7 to 8, with the idea that we may actually have new courses that are going to be Bloomberg based. Good point to make. This seems to be just for finance measures. We are going beyond that. First and foremost, we have our introductory course, that is Finance 320, in which we decided that all students are going to be using Bloomberg. And because this is a B-score course, every single student from all the disciplines in the college are exposed to Bloomberg. That's number one. Second one is that we are going to be incorporating Bloomberg into selected accounting courses. So our idea in terms of the teaching is that it's not going to be just finance. We are going to be sharing and we are going to be extending to any course, any discipline that could take advantage of using Bloomberg. Now, I mentioned a few moments ago that we are going to have the lab open in the fall. This is also part of the learning. The experiential learning, in terms of the environment, the Bloomberg is designed in a way that it's going to look like a trading floor. So students are going to have the opportunity to sit in a way that professionals are sitting. They're going to have screens all around the classroom, and they're going to experience the way that professionals use Bloomberg. The lab is going to be open, available pretty much all the time. Yeah, we had to set maybe a few restrictions about weekends or any particular days that we don't have access to the building, basically. But this Bloomberg lab and the design is meant to actually get students really engaged and working in a way that not only they're going to be working with the terminals, but we're going to have a layout that we can have conferences. We can have speakers from all around the country actually having, I don't know, a guest speaking, meeting with our students. Okay, so Bloomberg has been used already, in when we were having only 2 terminals. Forgot to mention that we have 12, and that's very meaningful. We started around 2013 with 1 terminal. Then we went to 2 terminals. And for quite a while, we were looking to get a 3rd terminal that allows you to get from 3 to 12. Then I will have a conversation with the dean about growing more, actually, because I got more information about how we can keep growing. But the moment that you get to 12 terminals and that layout of the lab, it's the game changer. That students have access to a lab that right now, till last fall, they were not having access. They were taking turns to get into the two terminals. And that also restricted how we could integrate Bloomberg in our courses. Now that we have that, we have it in the introductory course. We have it in the course that is the investment strategy. We have it in portfolio management. And this is the part that I presented on last week on Wednesday, was one of the core finance core courses that is considered one of the most difficult courses, Finance 328, that is an introduction to derivative instruments. I already asked my students in the fall, would you be interested in having an assignment in Bloomberg? After I asked, how many of you have experience using Bloomberg? I have 44 students, and I think that not even a handful said, I know how to use Bloomberg. When I asked, would you be interested in having right now, this semester, I can put it together, 44 hands went up. And I put it together. I'm still in the works. I will have Emma helping me because she's kind of like my partner, yeah, in terms of the projects. And I'm presenting this, and this is the moment that probably I will start losing you, okay? That's okay, yeah? Just stay with me. That is, we have this assignment that is about financial options. And several of you know what the financial option is, but not all of you know. And a financial option is a very well-known financial instrument that is traded in exchanges and over the counter. And options are, as the definition is over there, is giving you the right but not the obligation to buy something. So for example, you are kind of like optimistic about what's going to happen with Apple. And you say, well, I may want to buy Apple, but I'm not willing to pay more than X price. I'm not sure if I really want to buy it. So I buy this right, the option, pay for it. There's going to be a pre-established price sometime in the future. So it could be 3 months from now that you are setting a price of 200. Now, clearly, if Apple is maybe 190 right now and goes 220, 230, by the time that you are able to exercise this right, you're going to exercise it because you're going to pay 200 for something that is worth 230. But if the price didn't go the way to 200, actually went down, there's no point of using it. You just go to the market and buy it cheap, okay? So this is something that students follow, students understand it, but then the problem becomes when you go from the example I gave to you is a call option, that's the name. Then you have the put option that is the opposite in terms that you want to sell. The problem starts when you start to combine these instruments, okay? That's what we call the strategies, trading strategies. And the way that these strategies are being taught, at least in my case, is that I have my slides, then I go to an Excel file, and I think that, yes, I can go to the Excel file, yeah, and show that to you, yeah, how I actually start explaining this. That is not here. Let me get here. I always do the same thing. I want to get out of the presentation. It doesn't allow me. There you go. So I start teaching this way. So you're my students right now, okay? If you want to take notes, you can actually take notes, yeah? Basically, what I do with this option strategy analyzer is say, well, we can buy this, we can sell this, and very important part is when you get, for example, with this chart, and let me change this number, you get something like this. Okay? What does that mean? Well, as I told you with the call, if you have a predetermined price at which you are going to be having this right to buy, It's going to be about here. If the price goes up, you're going to buy it. If it doesn't, you're not going to do anything. And this graph is actually showing to you what you pay for this right. This is static. This is not actually showing to you something that Bloomberg does. And because I don't want to be running out of time, I will go to my assignment. The assignment that gives you a lot of instructions here, plus after they get all this, they have a full example using Apple, for which they have screens coming from Bloomberg, telling them how to get with the menu, the information that they need using Apple. But this is the main thing. This graph. This graph, even though I didn't show it to you in Excel, this graph, the green, is a combination of two options. If I were to do the same thing in Excel, you would see kind of like it be in Excel. That's it. However, you can see all these curves, right? Those curves are the key here. We are using real data. We can actually simulate, and we can see what happens, not just in a static way, that is at the time of the expiration of the option, but any time before. And those are the curves that the students had to analyze. Then they have something that is called the grids, that are the sensitivities of these options to changes in time, volatility, and other variables. And that is the value added in terms of the exercise. The first part is kind of like do this, do this, do this, get to here. Now tell me, what this means. And that's the moment that the students start actually struggling the right way, that they have questions. I allow all of them to work together, even though they have each one of them a different company. So I came up with 44 different companies last semester. 44 that actually have options, But I said, you can all work together. And because we were a centennial, because of the fire, I was walking around and seeing all the time students at the terminals working together with their respective companies, And I was close to the terminals, so they were knocking the door and saying, can you come over? I was not giving them the solution. I was telling them, tell me how you get here. What does this mean? And they were struggling also with this, that I'm not going to have enough time to give the details, that this is the combination of the options, that Bloomberg is not actually giving you this in one step. You have to do it in two steps. And they were stuck there. Now they know, boom, that's it. They know it. So let's say, the way that we move from something textbook-based, Excel that helps a lot, but to Bloomberg, is so significant that the students can tell how much they're learning, and we can tell how much they are retaining. And the part that really, really matters is that, well, not the only part, but one part that really matters is that they can show this when they are looking for internships, for jobs, and say, we know how to use Bloomberg. We don't have the Bloomberg terminals collecting dust there. We are using it 7 to 10 courses. Okay, so I'm okay with the time, right? Okay, well, because I have like 200 more slides there. Okay, so I want to be sure that you get the idea of what we are doing. So yeah, probably stop here, because if not, I will probably really lose you. Okay, so open for questions. Yes.
Other they have these, how many do they have? Like, is it really unique?
It's quite unique. It's quite unique. It's not something that you're going to find in all universities. The big ones have them, not all of them, but the big ones, you can assume that by default, yeah, they have the resources, they are going to have these labs. But even the one from last week that they have an endowment of 35 million, so it was kind of like, interesting, yeah. They don't know how to use it. That's why they were at my session, and I will be bombarded with emails about asking me about this exercise. That I said, I have no problem to share, but it's a work in progress. So does it make a difference? Yes, it does. Yes, it does. Having the lab is, as I said, is a game changer. Matt. Green Bay has it, yeah, yeah. And then you have the private kind of like Marquette has it, yeah. But it's the big names, yeah, having it. Matt.
Have you found that more employers are now seeking our graduates as a direct result of that, or what feedback do you get from the advisory board or employers, given the opportunity that students have to listen?
What we know is that the very moment that you have Bloomberg and all the certificates that you can actually get stands out. Now we are in the transition right now. How is going to be making the difference? We know from the advisory board for sure that, and they have been helping us a lot about getting this, is that of course we are going to be, if we do it the right way, we are going to be growing. And employers are, when you get into the virtual circle, that employers are going to be looking for more of our students because they know that we have this technology. And it's actually already happening, but 1 or 2 students, we want to increase that number. We are in the transition right now, really.
Shall I go ahead and share the history of
Yep.
Matt, with the advisory board for finance asked to meet with me fairly early on after I just got here. And they basically sat down with me and said, this is where we think we should be doing fundraising. We should create the opportunity to expand Bloomberg. Here's why. So this would really came up ground level from the finance advisory board, and they were instrumental in making some asks and doing some pitches to get enough funding so that right now we have 3 years of funding for Bloomberg at the level that it is with the 12 terminals, and I'm seeking to create an endowment, right? So that it survives me, because I am going to retire. Not tomorrow, but unless I win the lottery. But I want something that lives beyond a particular dean, because particular deans may have different interest levels in whether or not you invest in Bloomberg. And so, yeah, and Foundation has been terrific in helping get the word out. So thank you.
Yes.
Are there resources for these kinds of classroom assignments that you can draw on, or are you really having to create them yourself?
There are resources, but I prefer to create them. This one is actually a little bit from one of these papers that are there, but it's the very first part. And I thought that it was very descriptive. It was kind of like a warm up, how to get to use Bloomberg and not beyond that. And that's the moment that I started introducing more stuff. I have actually 2 extra sections that I can introduce here, but I don't know how far I can go. I have to try, yeah, with my students. I think that what is kind of like already out there could be helpful, but the more we tailor what we're doing in terms of our courses, the better off we are going to be, and also making the difference, because we are going to know exactly where students need to actually get to know, not just the generics. The generics are going to be kind of like they learn it and then they start forgetting. But if you are combining what they're learning in the classroom with Bloomberg, the retention should actually go up. So yeah, I've been very busy and entertained creating these assignments. Yeah. Yes.
Did you and other faculty have Bloomberg experience before getting these terminals? Or are you kind of teaching yourself it as well?
No. We have, I don't know how many we have with the experience, but I'm probably the one with most experience. Yeah, it's like 30 years or so. Yeah, I I started using Bloomberg while I was working in the industry. And always my anecdote is that one day, because I'm from Argentina, so Spanish speaker, but I was one of the few speaking English. So they grabbed me one day, put me in front of the terminal. You learn how to use it because you know English. Okay, boom, that's it. And it's kind of like painful at the beginning, but then it makes a difference. And I learned so much by doing that. Now I think that my experience helps to tell or to share that with students where actually to learn, and not just to learn about everything, a little bit about everything and nothing, in particular. So this exercise is one in which you really learn something. Yeah.
Is Bloomberg the standard? Like.
Yeah.
Wrong, okay.
Yeah. That's why I use the clip from that movie, because every movie that you're going to see from finance, you're going to see somewhere a Bloomberg terminal. Yeah. But this one, it was, to me, it's kind of like funny that they're walking all around and Bloomberg and Bloomberg and Bloomberg. The story is not funny, but the walking is like you're seeing all the terminals. Yeah.
Bankers boxes sitting.
No. No, but I had to recommend that movie to learn what happened in 2008. Yeah, it's a really good movie. Yeah, to see. And if you're not familiar with the terminology, grab a finance student or someone, yeah, that can explain to you all the stuff. But it's a really, really good one. Yeah, no boxes, the opposite, actually. Yeah, we want our students.
Interested in with asking you and your colleagues, is there any way we can have just a Bloomberg experience for the students in the introductory class? So my philosophy on that is more about demonstrating to employers, regardless of your major, it's clear the applications, but if I were a major that wouldn't necessarily be using Bloomberg, I'm not going to go get a job on Wall Street. I'm not going to be using that. Why bother trying to give that exposure to students? And part of my answer is because I think it demonstrates that you can do hard things. Bloomberg is fairly well known for being difficult to, it's not user friendly. This is not I'm going to, use a voice enhanced thing and say, hey, Bloomberg, it's not Siri, right? Hey, Bloomberg, could you please show me this? And so there are fits and spurts, right? There are struggles in for students to learn how to use this. But once you get some basic knowledge of it, I think that increases your confidence for the next technology that comes along that isn't particularly easy to use. I think it demonstrates that you have good problem solving skills. And to Rachel's point, it is pretty well known in most businesses, even if they may not have a Bloomberg terminal, they may not be using it. But I just felt like that there were important positive spillover effects that would come from having an exposure. Please don't worry, we're not going to turn every single business student into someone who could go out and manage a portfolio commercially. That's not our goal. We want to have a wide variety of opportunities. But I just feel like the name recognition and the problem solving skills are valuable for all of the business students. And it's a differentiator in recruiting. When we say every single, there are very few schools our size who could say every single student who comes to the College of Business at UW-Eau Claire has an opportunity to do an assignment using our Bloomberg terminals. That just does not happen.
Yeah.
That sounds like a great note to end on, then. All right, thank you.